I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is Project Architect 2. So last episode was huge. We set out and fought the Chaos Guardian, and now we have ourselves some beautiful Chaos Shards. And now that I have all of this, we can get started with actually crafting in Draconic Evolution. And so we're going to start working on the Archium. This is going to be our next to final stage before working on Faded Matter. As soon as we have this though, we can actually start converting our antimatter over and start actually using it to produce fading matter, which we're going to need in order to make creative items. Now for this setup, we're going to need some chaotic cores, and we're also going to need the chaotic fusion injectors. Now, this process does not have to be automated. You can just go ahead and get it set up. However, making yourself some chaotic cores is going to be best done if you get some automation done. For example, for their draconic cores at least. Now, something I wanted to note, if I sound a little bit odd in this episode, I have been recovering over the last week from a pretty nasty illness where I was coughing so much, lost my voice. Yes, very, very bad. But I'm now on the mend, so I may sound a little bit off, but that of course will get better over the next few episodes, as I'm still slowly but surely recovering from that. So today I'm going to be spending a lot of my time in the Draconic Lab. And if you remember, the Draconic Lab was kind of meh. Honestly, not a whole lot here. Our injectors and this right here is kind of off-centered and stuff like that. We're not going to be spending a lot of time here. Instead, I've set up something a little bit nicer, and it's upstairs. I've extended onto this. So take a look, a gander at what I've done up top here. So essentially I just created a path through the middle section here, made it look a little bit nicer. And so what is going to happen is we're going to have an injector here and an injector here, one doing automation essentially for those cores, which I said is going to be one of the most important parts, is believe it or not the chaos cores, but actually automating the draconic cores. These are the most important thing to have automating. So one of them is just going to be crafting those things. And so we got to get that up and running, which means we're going to need a lot of injectors, which means I've got a lot of grindy work ahead of me, because making injectors, in my opinion, they are pretty grindy. But I will show you yet again a way that you can set these up and just kind of let them run. Now, in my opinion, the best way to sort of semi-automate this is by simply using a RFTools timer, and you just have the orange part facing into the core from the top. And this is very specific because you don't want to block where the injectors are, and then you just need something to pull the items out. So that way we can just put like a stack of items in here. It will forcibly do the craft based on the redstone signal that it receives, and then this will automatically pull the completed items out. So let's go ahead and get these injectors sort of upgraded. Now, I'd already done this technically down here. We do have higher tier injectors. We went up to Draconic just to sort of get, or Wyvern, just to sort of get things done. But today I've got to go all the way from basic, and I'm going to be doing this in sets of 36. So that way we have plenty for this, allowing us to have at least 12 injectors. And I want to go all the way up to chaotic. Now this is going to get a little bit of expensive with power, but speaking of power, I think what I want to do is utilize our gates for this. And, or actually, yeah, you know what? Instead of gates, I think we should use points for this, just to make sure that we are getting enough power. But all I'm going to need to do is place in one of these like this. Now I do have 12 here. We're not necessarily going to need 12, but I have these stacked up, and this is in stack mode, and we should be able to get all of these in. We're going to have all of the crafting ingredients required inside of all of the injectors. Perfect. So that is in there. And then we need our flux networks. And I did have a configurator. I have to make another one. And I'm just going to place one on the back and make sure it's selected on our main network, and we'll keep it a normal priority. That should be fine. And then I should be able to copy the settings. The limit, I'm going to go ahead and bypass limit. We have plenty of power, so that should not be a problem. Yeah, and we'll use this to just copy the settings over. And I'm going to do that for all of them. And now with that said, I should be able to just place this in, and it's going to just automatically start working and just work. And as soon as it's done, it's going to empty the product down here. And then that redstone pulse is just going to initiate. I didn't even click start. That's what that redstone is all about up here. And so while this is working and getting all prepped up, what I'm going to be able to now do is start working on the next tier items that are going to be required. For example, getting, this is producing the Wyvern tier, but we need to start moving into the Draconic tier. And that's where things are going to get a little bit more expensive, but are definitely still doable, as we do have EMC technically on Awakened Draconium. Now, after each consecutive craft, you can see I now have the Wyvern. I'm going to go ahead and just essentially break all of these, just like so. And I'm going to replace them with the newer tier. And then everything should still be linked. All the power is linked. The only thing that's going to change is the crafting speed itself, because these should allow a bit more power. I think these were only letting like 13 RF per tick in. Now, the ultimate way to power these is using Draconic Evolution's power system, but we may not actually need that. I don't know. I'm still going to be kind of figuring that out as I go. But now all I have to do is just get these placed in, these new items that are going to upgrade these to the Draconic tier, and we should be ready to rock and roll for making these Wyverns turn into the Draconic versions. So just like that, it says injector tier too low. Oh, that's right, because I never changed these. So yes, I'll just have to switch these over to the Wyvern. Just like that. And we should be ready to rock and roll, giving us 24, which is exactly what we need. We need that in the Draconic tier. And perfect. You can see it already jumped and started to craft. Very, very nice. Now, yes, this is allowing in like 166 RF per tick, where the other ones were only allowed like 14 or 15. So now with Draconic out of the way, we should be able to also upgrade these to the Chaos version. And all the Chaos version requires of us is to have those Chaos fragments, and we should be able to have ourselves the fastest injectors up and running. I want to preface this too, not only the fastest, but keep in mind, each of the higher tiers allow you to craft anything of the prior tiers. So the Chaos ones essentially are a crafter that allows you to craft literally everything. And I should be able to jumpstart this just by placing that in there. And there we go. And each tier, like I said, gets progressively faster just because of the speeds that this is able to send. And this is now sending like 6,000 out of the Draconic for the crafting operation. I can only imagine what it's going to look like on the Chaos versions. So here we go. This is actually what it looks like on the chaotic injectors. And I'm still producing more chaotic injectors, but I just converted all the ones I had. It is so much faster now. Now drawing 14.8 thousand. That is a lot that it is pulling out for each of these crafts, and that's per injector, by the way. But yeah, you can really start to see the speed of the injectors now, especially at this highest tier. So now that my injectors are ready to go, it's now to kind of talk about how we can successfully automate these things. And now I wish it was as simple as just simply hooking up, for example, a pattern provider to the Fusion crafting core, but unfortunately that's not the case. So what we're going to have to do instead is, I think, utilize some modular routers yet again. And modular routers is just really good at doing things like this. For example, taking items and routing them around correctly. Now, as far as the items go that you're going to need from Applied Energistics, essentially you just need your quantum link chamber, and you need it linked up to the one that is in your overworld. Of course, I have a nice little area set up for this. And this gives me 32 channels. This is going to be more than enough for what we're going to be doing here. So let's go ahead and start working on how we're going to automate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a pattern provider that is going to send the items that are going to technically go directly into a barrel. So this barrel, for example, we'll put that right here, and then we'll come back to this here in a second. Now, we're going to have two modular routers that are going to work separately from one another. So those modular routers, I just placed them in. They are connected to the barrel. And the more that they're going to be doing is they're going to be pulling the items in from that barrel. Now, this is where things are going to be very interesting, right? We don't want them, well, we only want them to pull certain things. So we need to define which one is going to send to our core and which is actually going to send to the injectors. And now, since we don't have a whole lot of recipes to automate with this, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But I do have two setups for this that I'm going to have in case we do want to automate more, but really there's only one thing. I'm just using this as an example to show you how you can automate. So we're going to have to kind of manage what we're allowing into this buffer slot. So the one for the core here, we are going to have to make sure that is set into a whitelist mode. And what we'll do is we'll place those items in here that we want it to specifically pull. And then we also want that pulling from the right side. So I'll put that here. Now on the other one, we'll define this one as the one that sends all into the injectors. This is going to be reliant on a blacklist, and the same item that we put inside this puller's whitelist, we're going to want to make sure we put that inside this puller's blacklist. So we're going to have to do that, and we'll have to manage that for each recipe we plan on adding. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as dynamically assigning these things. So there we go. That is ready to go, and that pulls the ingredients that the pattern provider sends. Now, setting up where the item that goes into the core is routed, that's going to be done with a regular Cinder MK2, and we can have that sent directly to the top, just as if we were hoppering it directly in, and nothing else is really needed in this particular modular router. Now, as far as the items go that go into the injectors, this is where things are going to be a little bit more tricky. We're going to have to make sure we use some distributor modules, and we want it to be transfer out of router. That is going to be just fine. And we'll start with one. We have 12 slots. These only support 8. So we have to go in here and we'll select each one of these, just like so, until we reach our maximum of 8, which should be now. And then we'll switch over and we'll fill up the remaining, just like so. And then both of these can go directly in here. But what we have to do is now we have to set each of these by shift right clicking, and we need to set them into single item mode. This is what's going to allow this to function. Otherwise, if we have multiple items, it's just going to stack them into one injector. And there we go. So now this will only ever accept one item from here. And we're only ever going to be sending one item anyways. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to set this to locking mode. And we're going to have it wait until the primary crafting result is returned. Much like we've been doing throughout the series, this is only going to send one set of our item or items, and then these should manage those items by sending them around, and then that redstone pulse should send it. But now we also need a modular router to pull the items back out of here whenever it's done. And so to do that, we'll use a puller MK2. That's going to be pretty straightforward. No blacklist or anything. We just need to make sure it's pulling from the up. And then we want to use the Cinder MK2, and we'll send this right back into the pattern provider. And this will be the final result. And that right there should be all we need to do to automate things within Draconic Evolution. Now let's go ahead and try to put this to the test. So I'm going to go ahead and build a recipe out here, and you can see this is all of the ingredients, or should be all the ingredients required for this. Notice the nether star gets sent in here, and we're getting a product back, which is going to be the core. Okay, so the nether star is actually what we want to be in that filter. So nether star, we're going to make sure we have at least one. And so like I said, this goes in the puller. Should make it nice and simple because of its, the puller here. We'll just place that in there. And then same on this one, this puller as well. We'll also get this. And that should hopefully direct our items where they need to go. We'll place the pattern in here, and then there's nothing to it but to try. So can I request one of these? It should send the items. There it goes. Now it's starting to route all of the items around. And if everything works, beautiful. We should get the product back, and now we have a completed auto-crafted Draconic core, and I have to say this has to be one of the easier ways of doing this. And now, of course, I can't leave the modular router just sitting out here in the open, so camouflage on some big chain, and voila, there's our modular router. Nice and concealed. Now, after getting both of these hooked up, I think I'm going to swap these out with some redstone links. It just looked a little bit weird having these on here. Having that big old tile just kind of up on the top. We'll put these both in receive mode, just like this. And I'm going to set them to 2 awakened draconium ingots. That should be more than enough. Perfect. And then I'll just hide it back here in the wall somewhere. Just a little redstone setup here. So we'll have our redstone link. It's set the channel here. And then we'll just have that pulsing to those. And that should be it. Just kind of cover this up. There we go, as if it never existed. Now, even though this setup may work for some crafts, by the way, it doesn't work for all of them. One, for example, where it completely shuts this down is this one, where we have large chaos that are in the recipe here, but also the main ingredient, meaning my filter setup is not going to work. Or will it work? I might be able to actually get this to function. So what I've done is I've linked these distributor modules here. This is going to be in the one that's not technically supposed to be sitting here, but for this particular craft, I have them set here. Now, what I'm going to need to do to get this to actually function, though, is inside of my Cinder module, we're going to have to add something very fancy. So modular routers has a way of regulating items with a regulator augment. And so I can put a regulator augment in here, and what I can say is, hey, only ever keep one of the said item inside of this slot right here. And so what that should do is it should skip after every loop, after its initial insertion, it should skip it every time and should now send through these distributor modules until all of the other items are evenly distributed. That should work. And the filter should also still work the same, where we make sure this is set here and we make sure this blacklist and so on and so forth. So for this craft, I'll go ahead and get that whitelist set in here. So it'll make sure all of those items only go into this inventory. And then this should have the blacklist here, and we'll make sure that those can only go into the side. So that should work. And whenever I build out the pattern under Draconic for the Chaos Core, we should see all 5 here going in here, and that produces this. That should work. We'll put this in until primary crafting output. And I guess the only thing we have left to do is to test it out. So can I make a Chaos Core, and will that actually work? Oh boy, I don't know. Did it even send the items? Devices online. Oh, that's right. It has to request all of these first. And then it should do it whenever, oh boy, I'm kind of nervous. Whenever it has all of the ingredients ready. That's right. This does require 4 of these cores first before it can actually make that other core. But this we know is working. That's perfect. Oh, that is beautiful. Okay, so this side is the only one that I'm concerned with. And it's mainly because of that odd setup here that I have to do with the way these route around. All right, this is almost done. There we go. And it only kept 1 in there. That's good news. And it does work. Oh, that is beautiful. And that is logic right there. Oh, I am super excited about that. And that is a chaotic core fully automated with the same premise. You just gotta love when an elegant automation solution just works. And the good news about this is I didn't really have to change anything other than adding 2 more of these and a regulator inside that Cinder module. And this also doesn't change any future crafting operations because it still should function the same way. We just add the thing, and this is only here for that special case. So now with that done, it's time for me to dive a little bit into some Create. Believe it or not, we're actually going to need a little bit of Create in order to fully finish out the Archium here. And that's because we're going to need a Wand of Symmetry, and this is kind of a sneaky little thing that finds its way into this crafting recipe, but it does require a precision mechanism and also requires it to be crafted inside of the mechanical crafter. The mechanical crafter part, not hard, but making the precision mechanism can be kind of tricky. Now for this to work, I recommend spreading this out at least 5 blocks like so, and then I'm going to place a belt. This makes this super simple to just place a belt down, place my 3 deployers up here, and now we got to focus on how are we going to loop an item that comes in from this side, goes through here, and then how does it know to send the item and loop it back around 5 times? And how we're going to loop the item. And that's where the item vault is going to play a pivotal role, because the item vault is almost like a pipe that has an infinite transfer limit where you can send an item from this side and it instantly gets teleported to the other side. And we can use funnels for these, brass funnels to be exact. So Create, and we can do brass funnels for this. And thankfully we have most of this stuff like ready to go and automated. So now that I have some funnels, essentially we're going to have a item that gets sent out of here, and then we want it to pass over these, and then when it's done, we want it to get sent back into here. So let's grab a Create. Actually, I don't know. Do I have the Create? Doesn't seem like it. So I'll go ahead and make the wrench real quick. Looks like it just needs a few golden sheets. Now, the reason I want this tool is because I want to be able to swap the position. So whenever I switch this is kind of like a hopper indicator. And so by swapping this is going to make it allow us to pull. And then we also want this side to send the item right back. And so you can see that is going to pull the items out. And then of course we want our finished product to make its way back here. Now, to determine whether or not it's a finished product, that's where we can simply use JEI and we can utilize some filters. So by utilizing a filter list from Create, we can drag the precision mechanism in here, and I want this to be a deny list. So this is going to be deny, and it is going to be under, let's see, respect data. So it needs to be a fully completed one, so respect the data of this item. And then if we place that in here, essentially what should happen is any item that runs through here that does not, or is on this list, will bypass this funnel and should make its way into here. Now, in this process, there are some byproducts that can happen. And so we're going to have to make sure we add those byproducts to this list down the road. Unfortunately, JEI doesn't exactly show them. So you kind of have to discover them. That's kind of one of the mechanics. I think it's kind of lame that that's how it is, but that is just how it is. Now, to give this all power from the back, I'm going to utilize the power of the chain drives. And what I'll do is I'll place some chain drives right here, and then I'll link to this middle shaft to this chain drive, and these all should now be connected together. And so all I have to do is use one of our electric motors that we made a few episodes ago, slap that on the back, and get a gate, and give this bad boy some power. And that should be more than enough right here. And of course, we're going to adjust the speed as we go, and we need to make sure it is flowing in the right direction, which it is not currently. So to change the direction, I just switch its tracks, and there we go. We have it sent all the way up to max speed. Now, to follow everything up, there's still a little bit more complications that we're going to have to kind of get over. But for the most part, we just need to get the items in. For example, cogwheels need to go first, and I can use the new JEI feature here to kind of see the recipe by holding shift. And then we need large cogwheels. So there's a large cogwheel that needs to go in these exporters right here. And then this is going to be iron nuggets. Now, all of these are going to need crafting cards just to make sure it keeps them in stock, and stocks are deployers. Now, here's where things get a little bit more complicated, because I don't want to use a barrel necessarily here for our sheets. Instead, what I want to use is I want to use a spruce barrel here for the sheets with an iron downgrade upgrade. So that way it only keeps a stack of those, or not iron sheets, those gold sheets in here. So let's get some gold sheets. Gold, if I can spell it right. Sheets, there we go. And I'll drag that in here. And of course, we'll put the crafting card. But as soon as I do this, it's going to start sending items in. So I kind of want to get one of my other logics done first before I start auto crafting those sheets. And to do this, what I'm going to want to do is I want to lock this funnel. When it receives a redstone signal, it's going to lock. And I can do that with an applied energistics level emitter. Pretty darn cool. And what we're going to be checking for are these actual completed components here, which is going to be the precision mechanisms. I'm going to add that here. And then what I should be able to do is drag that into this slot, right? And then we need to set a value. Right here it says emit when levels are above or equal to the limit. And what we can say is emit a signal when the levels are, let's see, above or equal to, I don't know, 16. Let's keep 16 in stock, essentially is what we're going to say here. So if our inventory has 16 of them in there, it is going to emit a redstone signal. Now, it's going to have a little bit of a delay because it has to craft 5 times, remember? So as soon as I turn this on, this is going to get started. And as soon as it requests that initial craft, this should start working. You can see right there. Like I said, there is going to be some byproducts, and I do have an importer, by the way, over here that should be receiving those finished products. And yeah, I think we're running into a little bit of a crafting issue here. I don't know, did I should have gotten all the crafting recipes, I think, set up. Yes, it looks like I had the wrong recipe for the large cogwheels. But there's just like a little trial and error thing. So there we go. That should now be fixed and should start sending. And like I said, this will actually shut this whole thing off whenever we, for example, reach that threshold of 16. Now, I wish I could just set this up upon request crafting, But unfortunately, that doesn't work out too well considering there is an 80% chance of success, leaving us with a little bit of a chance of failure. And chance-based stuff just doesn't work out so well with auto-crafting stuff. Now, another thing I like to do is make sure the export on this drawer right here is set to 1. That way it only sends one item out on the belt at a time. Oh, and by the way, just in case you were wondering what the actual list is of scrap items, this is it for the most part, outside of crushed gold ore, which I don't know if it can spawn. Actually, I don't have any to apply. You know what? I might just drag it in here just to be sure. But this should prevent it from getting looped in here, which is causing a little bit of an issue. So now that I have the precision mechanism, I can go ahead and start to configure the actual crafter that is going to make our wand here. So this, for example, needs a precision mechanism and so on and so forth. And I'm setting this up to allow for automation, but I don't know how long I'm going to keep this sort of automated, because my ultimate goal is to take this and move this on into its even further version to produce even more EMC using our antimatter, which is why I kind of have the antimatter scaled the way it is. So this right here is just a simple matter of getting the ingredients in, brass, and making sure that the things that need crafter cards, for example, have them. Some of these things are going to need crafter cards. Definitely the brass is one of those. It's going to have that requested. Thankfully, these crafting or mechanical crafters can only store one item in them. But very, very nice. This altogether is only going to utilize 8 channels, believe it or not. The perfect amount required. So I think all of that set up. Yep, there it is. And there it placed in the last few items. And with that, we should be good to go. So I'll just get the motor in, place the gate, and we should be ready to rock and roll. And I think I'm just going to leave it at this rate. That is more than fast enough. Honestly, it's a little bit too fast. I'm going to take it even slower. Yeah, that should be it. Now, it did not actually craft. It actually exploded down here for whatever reason. So I'll have to take a look at the recipe here. I think we have everything in place. I just may not have had everything turned correctly. Ah, that's what got me. It's not crying obsidian, it's just obsidian. And this is also going to fail on this craft too. But I thought it was crying obsidian. That looks an awfully lot like crying obsidian, but it's not. It's cobalt obsidian apparently that it's swapping between. Goofy on my end. But there we go. So that should be rocking and rolling. Set that up to 8. Perfect. I'll take my ingredients back. But after this, we should have a wand. Now, I do want one of these wands to keep because the Wand of Symmetry is such a cool, powerful building tool. It allows you to basically do the same thing that I've been doing where I've built like 1/4, but it does it while you're actively building. So it'll place, if you place a block here and you have it set in this center point, it'll place a block here, it'll place a block here, and so on and so forth. It'll also break blocks too. Which is another neat little thing that it can do. If you break a block, it'll also break a block in that same position that is around it. Beautiful little tool right here. Oh, it's so cool. But this is going to help us in this automation, which I think at this point now we have everything we need. So we should be able to make the Archium block. So there we go. We have a little bit of that chapter now complete, but we still have to craft the items. So let's get all of those items together and let's head on in to our Draconic area. So I guess now it's the moment of truth. I have my pattern ready to go with all of those ingredients, and then I just need to set the input ingredient that goes into the main core into the filters here. So beautiful. That one is in. This one is going to be in as well. There we go. And that should be everything we need. Place this in the pattern. Oh boy. Okay. I think this is it. All right. So all I have to do now is simply request one Archium. Or sorry. One Archium. It does say I am missing a couple of things. Like the copy paste gadget and the cut paste gadget, which I'm almost positive I have those. Let's see, cut paste gadget. I have the ability to request them. Ooh, so there might be some issues here with with not being able to do this, mainly because we may not have enough actual crafting CPUs to do this. Oh, that is something I didn't actually account for. So you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and get one of each of the building gadgets crafted, because it can't do all of them simultaneously. Oh, that may be why too. Shears, because I didn't actually make a pattern. This is kind of the things that I have to go through. I didn't actually set up autocrafts for making shears out of all the things. There we go. Beautiful. I'll just throw that in here somewhere. And let's go ahead and try this again. Let's see. Will it work now? Okay, so it's missing the infinity wand, the copy and cut paste. I got to see what's going on with these. Interesting. So I have them all crafted. You can see right here. So let's go ahead and try the arch again. And like it says, the recipe still says, okay, maybe it's because I need to set the substitutions enabled for this to particularly work. That might just be the case. So I put this in here. Oh, that's right. There is no substitutions in this mode. So this should all work. I don't understand why it's not. Interesting. So I just swapped out the one that I crafted with the one that's in the recipe here. And I'm going to do the same thing for the copy paste gadget. And this may be something that you encounter as well. Notice how now it has the plus on it. And then I'm going to have to do the same thing for the wand. I think probably because the data that JEI has kind of breaks everything. And of course, as you can see right here, that also broke everything. So I'm going to redo this. And yeah, I'm going to have to redrag these items in. For example, that gets replaced there, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now with that set up and that recipe now rechanged, let's see. Everything looks good. We hit the start button, and we just sit back, and we hope that this all functions. All of these building materials, which by the way, I absolutely love. I set all of this to be like some of my favorite building tools that are all wrapped in this one thing. Of course, the ultimate goal was getting the Chaos Dragon beat, but there it is. That is a huge EMC gain that just happened there with the Archium block. This thing right here is just beautiful and is the culmination of all of this work put together, compressed down into this and ready to be turned into fading matter. Because our next step is going to be using the antiprotonic nucleosynthesizer, and with a little bit of antimatter, will produce us some fading matter. And just to put this in perspective, going from the prior here, which the archulation, into the Archium is a gain of 125 billion EMC. So quite a bit in that particular department. Now, one issue that I've already come back to kind of bite me is the fact that this will build up if the threshold goes down. So what I can use is a threshold switch here, and I can have this emit a signal when this inventory is more than, for example, 50% full. And that way it will shut this off if this starts to build up and has too many items in it. So yeah, definitely something that I'm going to want to do. And this threshold switch is pretty powerful in that regard. So notice how it's going down. So if the inventory here fills up to 50%, sends a redstone signal, shuts this off, and then makes sure that it can continue looping through its products before it sends another batch. Now to technically get this auto crafting, well, that's where some magic is going to come into play. So I recently figured this out because, of course, this isn't something I typically have issues with normally, but this item I want to request. And if I put the crafting card in here, we get this option right here. So stock items. So use stocked items. I don't actually want to do this. So it says do not use stocked items, only craft items while exporting. And so that means every export is now going to be a request craft and will not pull from our inventory. And this solves an issue that I was having where I was like, oh, well, this will just create an EMC loop where it's just going to constantly try to pull items out of our system and send it back in. And I don't want to do that. So this will start to request those items without pulling it from our inventory. And it should send that EMC link there. So we should see a request that has just happened here, where it is going to start requesting those items. You can see right here. And once it has the prerequisites, after it does this craft, then it will start working on the next thing. You can see right here, all of the items going in for that. Oh, that is so good. And we now have essentially automated the process of producing Archium. And so now we will get that little bit of EMC gain, and this will continue to go on until we start working on our next process, which of course is going to be utilizing some of that fancy antimatter. So of course, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you learned something new, whether it was about Create or Draconic Evolution, or how to, of course, autocraft with Draconic Evolution. If you did enjoy, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and of course, give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. And of course, with that being said, it's now time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks, by the way, is going to go out to Young Wilder. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. I hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, I will look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!